going on? Oh, I'm not used to being on this side. There we go.
There we go.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of Huskers Live. We have a few things to get into today. The EJ Barthel extension, of course, is probably the most noteworthy considering the rumors there. We're going to talk about those, what the rumors were, and what his deal looks like, what the finalized staff looks like. We're also going to get into a little bit of the basketball talk, a little bit of the baseball talk, and talk a little bit more about Matt Rhule's conversation with Josh Pate and some of the insights that he gave on there that were kind of noteworthy to us. But as you can see there, again, announced I think officially last week, Brian Moore is a part of the channel. You've probably seen a couple of videos from him. So what's going on, Brian? How you doing today, man?
I am doing pretty good considering it's -2 degrees in Kansas City. So
yeah, how's that going?
Yeah, I was freezing my ass off at work all night or all day, so I feel bad for the guys that are still there.
It's one of the only parts of the year where I'm happy it's 74 degrees and sunny in Arizona, and I live here for it lasts for a little bit. The summer goes for like 6 months out here. So, but
I'm jealous of you.
I don't know if I'm built for all that cold weather stuff. It's just never been in an environment like that. So yeah, it's
the kind of weather where like you walk outside and your face just hurts.
Yeah,
it sucks.
Yeah, can't say I've experienced that. I've seen snow once in my life, and it was only enough to build a little bitty ass snowman and throw him in my freezer. So it wasn't even really long enough.
It wasn't even a fun snow.
No, more so like dig out of the crevices of my truck and make the world's smallest snowman, which this was right after we hired Scott Frost, and I named him Scott Frosty the Snowman. He didn't age well. Poor Scott Frosty.
Good. Yep.
This cold sucks. They canceled school 3 days in a row.
Yep. My kids don't have school Monday, Tuesday, or tomorrow. They are now out of snow days. They will extend the school year into the summer.
Oh, you have a certain allotment of snow days you can have.
Yep. So then they my boss's wife works for the same school district as my kids go. So he told me that they're probably extending the school year.
I guess that makes sense because we had a certain amount of hurricane days we could have.
That's weird.
Even though our town was tore up and there was no power at the school, but yeah, there was only a certain amount, or else the school year had to go a little bit longer. Justin, what's going on, man? Appreciate you hopping in here. Like I said, we're going to touch on some baseball, some basketball stuff, and some football stuff. Anything else before we dive into this? Husker Huddle, you and Ops. Black Ops. I don't know.
Is that what you mean, Black Ops? I don't know.
No.
Not on Black Ops.
Maybe
OPS, meaning in Kansas City, Olathe Public Schools or Overland Park Schools. I don't know.
Yeah, just clarify that down below. Never mind me.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So we can understand your question, so we're not thinking you're playing Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Omaha Public Schools. Okay.
Oh no, I'm in Kansas City.
He's in Kansas City, so yeah, he's over there in Chiefs land. Unfortunately for him, he is in fact a Chiefs fan. But let's go ahead and dive into the EJ Barthel situation, or the contract extension. Now, over the course of we'll probably 24 hours before it, the Texas rumor got going. Do you want to describe that a little bit? What was going on with that?
Yeah, I posted it on X, and then I think I texted you right around the same exact time that I was hearing some things. And then shortly thereafter is when Pete Nakos dropped his article on it. So that pretty much confirmed what we were hearing, that he was on the board for potentially going to Texas. And then the other one I know for sure was Penn State. He did interview at Penn State. I think they ended up going with DeMarco Murray, if I'm not mistaken, but
I believe so.
I can't remember, but I know he interviewed there as well. So there was some rumors that he was potentially leaving. And then apparently Matt Rhule said, no, we're going to keep you around and I'm going to bump your salary up by a ton of money. And now he's making $450,000.
Yeah. And that kind of goes along with kind of what he was talking about interview, where it's like attacking, right? Going after, if you want to keep your guys, you got to pay, right?
Yep.
Not one of those things where it's like, we're going to let you walk and then replace you and hope for the best. He's trying to keep that. I think the staff is together as much as possible with the good people he has. And if there's any changes, it's because he had no choice in the matter, or it's just his accord. So yeah, salary bumps from $293K to $450K beginning February, this month. And then he'll be extended through 2027 season. So
What's your take on Barthel as a coach or
You know,
recruiter?
so as a recruit, so far as overall as a coach and recruiter, like I think he's done well. It's just so hard to grade the running back room with the mismanagement of the running game. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part because I feel like, obviously Emmett Johnson has developed pretty well. And so, he dealt with a lot of injuries, but also the play calling was just terrible and didn't really set up his running backs very well. So I think so far, I think he deserves the extension, but I think it's one of those things that still remains to be seen. As far as recruiting, as far as recruiting, I don't know if we've got to see a lot of his recruiting chops, and especially since we didn't target any running backs.
Yeah, he did land Quan Lacey in the 2024 class, and then he flipped late. That would have been a huge pickup if he would have stayed with Nebraska.
Jamar Parker was a good get.
And Parker was a really good get. I know he's from that St. Louis area, and I know Keith Williams, the whatever you want to call him, recruiting guy, basically. He was big in landing Parker. I mean, obviously Barthel was part of that, but I know Keith's connections and inroads to St. Louis was huge. And then I know Jamar Mosey is really helping with class of 2026 running back to Stephen Walker.
Yeah,
that's another Kansas City area kid, and obviously Barthel is recruiting as well. For me personally, other than Emmett, I don't see a lot of development. But again, part of it's just poor play calling. Part of it is poor blocking or blocking schemes from the offensive line. And then my other thing, and I wanted your opinion on it too, that, and I think you'll know more than I, the rotation at running back seemed so bizarre to me.
Oh yeah,
they were shuttling them in and out like every other play, and I'm like, how do you catch a rhythm?
Yeah,
if you're going in and out all the time. And I think that's part of it too.
Nobody could get a hot hand. Yeah, the rotations made no sense. Essentially, they were just rotating backs just to rotate backs, and when one did kind of break off a run, the next drive you'd have a different back in there.
Yeah, it made
didn't make a whole lot of sense at all. So yeah, I think it's the jury's still out, but I don't think it's where he doesn't stand out in a bad way. And that means I don't think he should, be let go or replaced because of that. I think the camaraderie there is important, especially in retaining Emmett Johnson. I feel like, Barthel probably had something to do with that as well. So it's probably makes sense that they would go after him, especially to make sure Emmett, is happy as well. So, but yeah, the rotations made no sense, but I feel like that's definitely going to be remedied under Holgorsen, as we saw, because Emmett's going to be minimum 50-50 with the snaps, but probably just the overall RB1 in most situations.
Yeah.
So, and it has to be. I mean, honestly,
saw when Dana took over a lot more Emmett.
Oh yeah, immediately. That's because, like I said, he came out and was just like, why is he not starting from the jump? That was the first question. So, appreciate you hopping in, Pit Snipe. What's up? Not the temperature, that's for sure. You're all dealing with that weather. Today was 0. Jesus.
Yeah.
We're in a different era, I guess. 5 and 7 and 6 and 6 because everybody raises. They got way too much money in Lincoln, apparently. And Rhule kind of talked about the record stuff too. Like it's just, I think this is necessary to make sure that they continue to build. You got to keep your guys together. You can't just sit here and just replace each year because you're in a building process. You can't all of a sudden like went 5 and 7 and then 6 and 6, 7 and 6 after the bowl win and say, okay, we're gonna start over and get rid of some of these guys, or get rid of guys that really haven't had any wrongdoing or missteps here so far. And then you're in a whole different situation where you got players rotating out. We saw when they got rid of or whenever we lost Tony White and Terrence Knight, and you're going to lose players. Like it's just not the time for that to happen. So you got to do what you got to do to retain them. That's my opinion.
100% with you.
Heat wave. It's up to 1 degree here. It's just South Union. Way too much player shuffling. Absolutely, yeah. It was pretty rough this year. Do you got anything more on the Barthel stuff? Before we kind of roll.
Not really. I think it's just a big year for him. I think he's deserving of an extension in the sense that I don't know if he's really gotten his full say and everything. And
Mhm.
I think this is a really, really big year for EJ.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is going to be kind of a prove it year for everybody, I feel like.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to dive into a little bit of the, what do you want to do first? The basketball stuff, baseball stuff, or the Matt Rhule conversation stuff?
We can do baseball because it's kind of the topic right now because people are freaking out on X about them losing the Grand Canyon the other day, which is
what are your thoughts overall about the start?
I never put a lot of stock into the start because Nebraska has to practice indoors all winter, and then when they get their first taste of action in outside conditions, it's February 15th when they started the season.
Yeah.
So slow starts don't worry me. Beating Vanderbilt, monster win.
Yep.
But that's not the Vanderbilt of 2010. Mm-hmm. They're still a damn good program. But I think they're doing well. It was 13-0 over San Diego State the other day.
Yeah.
A complete blowout. So it's not a surprise that you'll see these ebbs and flows as these guys kind of get back into playing outdoors and playing in the elements a little bit because they've been stuck inside working at Hawks Championship Center all winter. I had a brain fart there.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
That's why I look until Big Ten play. Once you get to there, that's when the season really starts for me.
Exactly. Yeah. Coming out, UC Irvine just took the offense a little bit, to get started. Kind of looking at the box score here from it just to kind of jog my memory because I feel like that game was forever ago the way baseball goes. It's such an emotional swing, like based on like each night you're watching, you're like, fuck, we beat Vanderbilt. It's like,
yeah,
we lost to GCU. But it's in the grand scheme of things, like you're talking about, it's not a big loss. Like it feels like it because each game it's the beginning of the season. We're hanging on each game right now. But the Vanderbilt, I feel like with that Vanderbilt win, I feel like that put a good, overall feeling, especially and then coming back and shutting out San Diego State. Like I feel like that put a good overall vibe on you just slipped that last game, 4 games on the road. It's a lot of games to play consecutively on the road. Yep. You come out against a GCU team who can be okay at times. They're about at mid-level, if that, but just couldn't get the offense going. And
when summer comes around and they're making selections for regional bids, they're not going to go, oh, man, you guys, Nebraska lost to GCU on February 17th. They're not in.
Yeah, 100%.
No, it's not going to matter. But they'll go, man, they beat Vanderbilt, though. That sticks out more than a loss to GCU.
Yes, especially if the season, like you said, can get going during the Big Ten slate. It's going to be the most important part is just coming out of that, unscathed. And, we're going to lose some games we shouldn't lose throughout the season. That's just the nature of baseball. But I'll take the 2-2. I would have, if I had to choose any, it would have been the win over Vanderbilt, and they got that. So, and then 13-0 to follow it up San Diego State. Doesn't hurt at all. But I think the season is going to be pretty good for this team. Just they got to get into the rhythm, establish that offense consistently, but they'll get it going.
Oh yeah, and then preseason ring too.
Yeah. What about the 106 mile an hour off the face? I don't know.
Did you see the pictures?
I did.
Oh my gosh, I've seen that happen live once when I played baseball. It happened to my teammate when he was pitching, and it was the freakiest thing I've ever seen. It was scary.
Yeah, here I'll pull it up here for and he's just smiling after the game.
Did you see him like pumping the crowd up too when he was walking off the field? What a badass.
Dude's a psycho, like in the best way possible. Hold on real quick. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, he's a psycho.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Do they know if he was they quoted it with LeBron James will not play due to ankle soreness. Did he break anything? I don't think so. I didn't really.
I gotta imagine there's a broken eye socket or something,
broken orbital or something in there.
He got rocked.
Yeah, he got cracked pretty hard.
I was showing somebody at work that video, and you heard it hit, and I go, "That's not the ball hitting his glove. That's it hitting his face."
Yep, 100%.
Scary situation.
It is. Yeah. I've never had anything like that hard hit me in the face, but like I dove for a line a line drive in the outfield and put my glove down as soon as it came over, and like it was pretty swollen, had the laces kind of, you kind of see them in my face, but that is a whole nother ball game. Like,
yeah, he's really lucky.
He's tough as hell though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Agree. We don't really know what we got in EJ. No glaring deficiencies, but yeah, we need 1,000-yard running back. Again, I don't know. Like we put a lot of value in the 1,000-yard running back, but we don't have that a lot anymore.
I
Just with
mean,
anybody. But
Emmett and Dante ran for 1,300 yards this year.
Yeah,
together. So I think that'd be fine if you had two guys like that.
It's very yeah, and to be honest, EJ is going to get a ton of like all-purpose yards too. So that's going to take away from strictly his rushing numbers. But yeah, I think he'll go over like 1,500 all-purpose. Nebraska pitching retained 66% of innings pitched. That's very important. Experience in the rotation is extremely important.
Their bullpen struggled last year, so that improvement is really big this year for them.
Yep. And to put the game in perspective with GCU, they were 4th for 31 with 10 Ks. So yeah, that's not going to get it done. So that we're going to need that pitching staff sometimes, at least until this offense get rhythm. But yeah, experience matters, and hopefully this team can kind of get over that hump and maybe kind of push for the CWS.
Gosh, can you imagine Omaha with Nebraska?
What it's been since Alex Gordon, right?
Yeah, I went to that game and it was absolute chaos. It was awesome.
That dude, I remember like that was the peak of Nebraska baseball. Like if it could, that was like 05, right?
Sounds about right. Because I think Gordo was drafted by the Royals in 06 or 07. Yep. But you had like Jabba Chamberlain, you had Brian Dunsing, I believe, was on that team. You had Gordo, you had who else was on that team? Shane Coleman.
I still go back and watch. They got a YouTube video of the one of the games out there for Nebraska. I even pop that on and watch it occasionally, just reminisce about time where we were actually in the CWS.
Oh, yeah. That was a special era.
Yep. Okay, 1,000 all-purpose, better stated. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
1,200. I think we're looking good at 1,200 for sure. But yeah, 1,000 all-purpose would be fantastic. I think he'll get that. It depending on too if they make a move in the transfer market. Here this later half. I don't know. We're going to have a running back outside of that.
Yeah, it depends on if they get a running back, which I think they're feeling fairly confident right now in that room, which us as fans maybe aren't, but the good thing is we're not the ones getting paid to make that decision. So
exactly. Yeah, I agree there. You want to talk about the basketball game just a little bit?
Oh yeah. Which one
was it?
Because that Northwestern game, I was unhinged
wild
in that first half, and I was watching a little bit while I was working and got busy, so I had to tune away for a little bit. But I was unhinged in that first half. I was mind blown that they continue to start so poorly on the road. It is mind boggling, and it's something they do. It's got to be part of the routine that just screws up their first half.
Yeah,
that was a bad Northwestern team. They suck. And they were missing their top two players, and you were getting absolutely boat raced.
But sometimes I feel like those are the games that do it, where it's just like, Nebraska football, when their quarterback goes out, they turn into,
oh my gosh,
the next Heisman candidate. You know what I'm saying? 1 second here. So we have a Mark Rogers hopping in here just a little bit to tell you about his book, and I'm going to go ahead and pull him in here now. What's going on, Mark?
Justin.
How we doing?
What's up?
Appreciate you hopping in here, and just told him real quickly about what you want to go over and talk about your book.
Absolutely, Brian. Good to see you as well.
Nice to see you, sir.
Yeah, we released this book a couple months ago, Disputed National Champions. So the link's down in the description section for you Nebraska fans of all the videos. The link's down there, or you can just go to Amazon and look up Disputed National Champions. So what we did here was we went through the entire 1990s. I chose the 90s because if you're familiar with how we have selected a national champion in college football, it pretty much started from day one. But in 1936, poll era, AP poll, which stayed the same all the way into the 1990s. And then there was a bowl coalition, and the BCS took over in 1998. So really the 1990s was when there was the most change that impacted the college football championship race and determined changes in how a champion was selected. And then that has been the forerunner of the playoff and so forth and where we are. So guys, basically what I did was I took every season and I, gave kind of a an intro into the season. What were the big storylines? What was expected? Who were supposed to be the national championship contenders? We look at the preseason rankings, and then I take everyone through the season and all the big storylines, the big games, the controversial plays, all of that business to set up then the postseason, which leads into, okay, where did we stand going into the postseason and who got matched up against who based on the rankings and the conference affiliations and the bowl games. And then once the postseason was played, okay, what was the final rankings? What were the final results, the rankings? And then the crux of the book is, did the rankings make sense? And who got screwed? Who got left out? Why maybe? Who had a deserving resume that was not considered? And then the conclusion of each chapter is basically, what did that season mean to college football? How did that kind of launch into the next year or the next decade? Was there a era ending like in 1997 with Tom Osborne? Was it at the end of an era or the beginning of an era, or did we get a glimpse of this or that, or how did things change? So that's just kind of half of it, because I didn't want to make this just a history book, because that would interest people like me, but not too many others, if it was just a history book. So what I did was I took each one of these seasons and I put it through the BCS era and what would that have produced. Then I took it each season, 1990 through 99, and into the 4-team college football playoff era. And so what would have each season looked like if there was a 4-team playoff? What would have each season looked like if there was a 12-team playoff that we've got right now? And I also went through the 14-team playoff that's being proposed right now. And what would have each season looked like with a 14-team playoff? And obviously, with most of these conferences throughout the 90s, they also didn't have conference championship games. The SEC started in 92, the Big 12 in 96. The Big 10 never got to one in the 90s, or the Pac 12. So I also show who would have been playing in a conference championship game that year, and then who would have been playing based on the current alignment in a conference championship those particular seasons. So it's just a fun read. It's a fairly quick read, about 100 pages. And I think people, I'm guessing we got college football nerds and junkies on here. That's kind of why we're here talking about college football in the middle of February.
For sure.
Unlike anybody else. So I think it's a good read for most college football fans.
What would you say, before I ask Pit Snipe's question, what would you say probably was your most interesting find when kind of going through that stuff?
Well, you're talking to the guy that when I was 15 years old wrote a 10,000 word essay on a college football playoff and why we should have one in a 16-team playoff. So like I already pretty much had this stuff like in my head in terms of the results and what happened and all that. But putting it into the playoffs, the 12 and the 14-team playoffs, and seeing some of the interesting formation of what those matchups would have looked like in those rankings. East Carolina would have made a playoff, and Southern Miss would have made a playoff, and things like that. And it's also funny because at one point early in the 90s, there were 7 conferences.
Yeah.
You had the Big East, you had the Southwest Conference. And so because of the way it's set up with the conference champions get the highest bids, there are like Notre Dame and Miami teams that were independents that would have been like number 8 in the country, even though they were like number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
And just, and who gets, and then I also show what a logjam there would have been. And we'll see it with this playoff. We kind of saw it this last year of, okay, you got 6, 9, and 3 teams, and you only got 2 spots. Who gets in, who doesn't? And I just go by the AP rankings and use that as kind of the committee, but just to show what kind of difficult decisions are ahead of us in this 12 or 14 team playoff.
For sure. Absolutely. Sounds like an interesting concept. I feel like you always come up with those interesting concepts, especially on the main channel where you have those ideas about going through historical data and stuff like that. Pit Snipe's question. What do you say on that? What say you on UCF? Are they the weakest title claim ever?
Well, sure they are.
Yeah,
they are. But I'm all for it, though. I'm all for it. I at the time I said, you know what? You went undefeated. The system at the time, we've kind of fixed it in terms of the group of 5 to say, hey, best group of 5, you get in regardless. But at the time, it was kind of this, oh, group of 5, you're kind of cute. We'll patronize you to believe that you actually do have a chance, but you don't.
Yep.
And make you feel good. But UCF, you're going to be like number 12 in the country, even though you're undefeated. But once they beat Auburn, what I thought was funny that year with Scott Frost was obviously once they beat Auburn, who just got done beating number 1 Alabama and number 1 Georgia.
Yep.
And they beat them in the same building of the SEC championship game and the national championship game. That was just kind of poetic justice. So I was all for, even before they did it, I said, hey, if I'm UCF, I'm hanging a banner. I'm throwing now, do I truly believe that they would have competed for a national championship?
Probably not.
No.
People were talking about how Auburn just checked it in that season because they weren't where they wanted to be in the title game like they thought they should have been. So there was always that too for the Auburn win that people threw out there as well. You have to wonder if that season actually is what changed Nebraska's trajectory for the worse, because then naturally, well, Scott Frost was going to get hired anyways with that last game because they basically announced it during the game. So.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, is there anything else that you want to put out on the book or anything like that? I dropped the link in the chat as well for anybody who wants to hop on there, take a look, and go get a copy.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Justin.
Yes, sir.
I'll just say basically, hey, Nebraska fans, you know what happened in the 1990s. You're in the thick of things every year. So you're in all these chapters. You're all in this thing. So this should especially appeal to Husker fans. So
absolutely. All right. Well,
appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Mark.
Absolutely.
All right. See you.
I'm shocked no one asked him about 97 Nebraska and Michigan. Nobody asked him.
They got to read the book for that. All right. So let's see if that part's in there. If not, we'll get them back on to ask them about it for sure. As a claimed title from one sports writer, I don't mind. They beat teams in front of them. Yeah, they can claim it. I mean, a lot of teams, but as long as they don't try, they just got to stop. I think they have stopped trying to flex it, but I don't know.
It's on their stadium, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think they hung a banner and everything. I'm back. It was early, now late, trying to catch up. It's all good, man. Go ahead and hop in here and pick up where we left off. So we talked a little bit about the basketball game. Nebraska coming from a huge deficit in that. Do you think Fred Hoiberg punched the locker or the whiteboard?
No question. No question. He punched a whiteboard or locker. I think that can be confirmed.
Is that what made them win? The other question.
I'll tell you a story. I had a basketball coach when I was younger that did a Bobby night and threw a chair at a ref.
Yep.
And I'll tell you one thing about that coach was you did not want to piss him off. And when you hit that point, you did everything you could to not get annihilated and not get screamed at. And those are the kind of coaches I like to play for.
Yep. So I guess whatever
that's going to push you. Because they didn't play good. I mean, that second half, they played really good. But I always say on Twitter or X or whatever, or past videos on my old channel, I always look at like a handful of things. I look at free throw percentage. I look at the rebounding margin, plus or minus. And then I look at not having droughts. Those are the three like indicators that I look at.
Yep.
And Nebraska started the game with a 5.5 minute scoring drought. They were minus 16 on the boards for the game. But when the game finally got close, your free throw percentage was what won Nebraska the game, and not having long droughts. And I particularly look at the first 5 and the last 5 minutes of each half.
Yep.
And Nebraska shot 79% from the free throw line for the game. And in the last 4 or 5 minutes, I think Nebraska was 100% from the free throw line, including that monster free throw after that alley-oop to Braxton Mia, who somehow has not missed a free throw.
Crazy.
On wood in like 3 games.
Yeah. Don't psych him out, because as soon as that happens, he's going to go on a slump because of you.
Yeah, that's what I knocked on wood, so we can't blame me.
We'll see. NU Michigan 98 is a game that we were all robbed of 100%.
Yeah.
I agree. I think most everybody will agree with you on that for sure. B-ball comeback was crazy. It was frustrating all the same, but still, just you got to get out of there with the dub, because then it hurts a lot less sneaking out of there with that.
Even though they lost to Maryland, you still feel pretty decent because they have two guys that are probably going to be top 10, maybe top 12 NBA draft picks. And you really didn't play that well, and you probably win that game if Bearcay is playing. And that would be your 5th or 6th ranked win. They are now like, what, 6-6 in quad one wins. I mean, they win one more game, they're in the tournament guaranteed. Sorry, trying not to do too much basketball talk.
No, you're fine. I was reading the comments. It's also kind of fun slapping the piss out of Peyton Manning. I like Peyton. I like Peyton. But yeah, back then, definitely. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and dive into some of Matt Rhule's comments. Now, he had the interview with Josh Pate over on Pate State's YouTube channel, 57 minutes in its entirety. So, what are some of the things that, we each kind of watched it. What are some of the things that you took away? I would start here with kind of what he talked about with, the spring game. Elaborate a little bit more on the spring game and not giving away info to other players, but also mentioning the coordinators and stuff like that. And essentially just was like, it's a different game, kind of what he talked about before. It's a different game now. And they're going to do something to celebrate the team and the university, but it won't be what it has been.
Yeah, we've talked about it too. It's the right call. You don't want to have that televised, especially now. New coordinators, you got a bunch of new players. You really want people to have tape on those guys right now. They'll have them on individual tape, or they'll have to go off Houston's tape, but you're not going to see anything with Nebraska. It's the right thing to do. People made fun of Matt Rhule for canceling it. Well, then like a week later, OSU canceled it. So he was just ahead of the curve, which it kind of seems to be a trend with Matt Rhule. He is not afraid to kind of put things out there and then take the heat. And then a week or two later, kind of just always happens where another team follows suit. He just seems to always be a step ahead of everything.
Yeah, I think they even kind of alluded to that when he was talking about, Josh Pate was talking about, like, you're an old school coach that isn't set in his ways. He's talking about, like, you constantly evolve with, and he kind of went into his mindset about that, just kind of like, you have to rapidly evolve the game, because in even 2 months, if you're not paying attention, you could lose track of the new rule sets, so it's just kind of like one of those things where he's had to kind of roll with the punches. He mentioned the COVID year being a struggle for first year head coaches, and learning to navigate that too kind of helped him navigate this, or prepare him a little bit to navigate this, because there it was changing daily, the news on how that was working in terms of each game, players out for testing positive, this, that, and the third. So what was your take overall on kind of what he talked about in that regard too?
The biggest thing for me that I really appreciate about Rhule is that he is willing to change. And I think we saw it more so this year, where he used the word attack at the end of the season. They're attacking the offseason. They're changing their philosophy with coaching and with recruiting. I think he was not going to be the guy that goes out and gets a huge haul from the portal, but he said something to the effect of, like, we need to win now, or like, we need to get moving now.
Yeah, he's all in. Like, he's competitive. He's talking about his competitive side came out, and he's like, this is, we were not trying to win, not saying not trying to win, but like building early on. We knew that was our goal. Our goal wasn't to win right away, but he's like, now that competitive drive is like kicking in, and it's time for us to quote unquote go. And then he said, so they attacked, may not have had that same thought process 3 years earlier, but now he's in that attack mode.
Yeah. And I think part of that was and if you think back to, like, just recruiting wise, that first class, he brought in a lot of kids that were these 2-3 year developmental kids. And then this year's class is less of those kids, and it's more portal guys. It's guys that are impact players that are going to play right away. I'd say you probably have 10 to 12 starters from the 16 portal guys.
Yeah.
And then even the changing in philosophy with coaching, where he was really big on, like, having these younger coaches that you bring up through the ranks and you develop. Well, that wasn't working. So out goes McGuire, in comes to Keel Shorts. Here comes Dana Holgerson. He demoted Satterfield. And then he hired Braden, who's more of your developmental coach that still needs some working, but he's a guy that has a high upside. But he went with extremely experienced, proven coordinators and Phil Snow. And I think that's just more of we need to kind of shift our philosophy. This can't take 3 or 4 years anymore. We need to get this thing rolling quicker.
Yeah. And I think it's more of that like hands-off approach that he's trying now. I think that was his goal, like have control over everything in the beginning, because it's still his kind of build, right? Have control over everything in the beginning, get it to where you kind of want it, and then kind of trust your players, trust your staff and all that, and let them kind of do their thing, while then at that point you oversee it and can keep track of all these changes, stuff like that. So if you think about the way he's kind of built it, now it's starting to make sense, now that it's kind of finalizing stuff like that, it's starting to make sense, like the 3-year plan that we talked about, it's kind of coming together into fruition. And, he kind of like you talked about, he talked about how much to value paying recruits versus paying portal guys, and then what range, because, one of the quotes you liked too was the desperate team sets the market.
Yep. The first thing I thought of was Spindler.
Yeah. So talking about stuff like that, where it's like you got, a team where you're valuing your right guard at $400K, but then there's somebody who's really desperate for a right guard, and then they come in and throw $600K at him. Is he going to be a depth guy on your team versus a starter elsewhere? So it's hard to keep that depth and stuff like that. But that's what he was talking about, alluding to. Yeah. So what's your thoughts on that comment? Kind of what he said about that.
It makes total sense to me. The reported number for Spindler was 1.5, and that was straight from his dad's mouth. So you're paying a starting right guard $1.5 million, and your starting left tackles in the portal are generating about the same price.
Correct.
I think Spindler will probably be the highest guard in the entire country at that price tag. He's probably in like the 1.2 range realistically.
Yeah.
But even like you think Dante Dowdell left for Kentucky, a desperate team, they need running backs.
Yep.
And they're probably paying him $500 to $600K at minimum.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we didn't see Nebraska go get a portal running back, because now that market's been set by a desperate team. Right. And they're like, well, man, we got EJ, we got Quentin Ives, we got all these guys that we can use, and we're not going to pay $600 for one guy when we can maybe pay $600 for 4 and get equal production, which to me makes perfect sense.
I agree. Yeah. And I think that's a good point when he talks about that, because then we're looking at some of these guys kind of like where it's like, oh, how do we lose a guy to X school? Well, that's kind of why, what I'm saying, they're just willing to give more for that guy than makes sense for Nebraska. And so but yeah, sometimes they run that price up on a guy you need, and then you end up paying a lot more than you would have normally paid,
especially if you value that player. Like if you think, okay, it's worth for us, we need a guy like Spindler, we'll fork out that money.
Yeah, we got Garrison from the Ohio State Voice of College Football. Finally have time to watch my favorite Husker who can't box. What's up, man? I appreciate you hopping in here, Garrison. If you haven't had a chance, go check out his stuff over at the Ohio State Voice of College Football too. So doing great stuff over there, even though he came in slandering me at my favorite hobby. How could you, man? No, I appreciate you jumping in here for sure. I'm okay with the spring game. The reasoning, let's see, all risk, no reward. Agreed. Yeah, I'm okay with the spring game thing. The reason it makes sense to me, again, maybe portal signing days, playoff schedules get reworked. Maybe it'll be viable again. Again, I think we love the spring game because it's kind of like that signal that football is like almost here, and it's how you just get a taste for like what they've been talking about the whole spring, and we get to kind of see some of the concepts. We get to see some of the players actually go out and play. So I get why some fans don't like it. It's part of the changing, again, it's one of those old school things, traditions of college football, but that's just kind of what the game's come to at this point. Got to roll with the punches and the change, or else,
And for Nebraska, it's actually not good.
Yeah,
because it's a huge recruiting tool, but it makes perfect sense. Like I said in one video, like you got to think rationally, not irrationally, or not emotionally, or whatever. This is one of those things. Like emotionally, this sucks, but realistically, like it needs to be done.
Exactly. Love your stuff. Love your stuff, guys. Best go Big. I appreciate you, Noah. Thank you for hopping in here. Corn farmer. I like what he's talking about here. I am from BFE though. I am from a town called Sour Lake in Texas. So yeah, it literally is a town of like 800, might be up to like 1,200, 1,300. I don't know what's up to now. But when I lived there, there wasn't a lot. It's one of those one lake towns. That everything, like to go to the gym, it's like a 3-hour ordeal. It's like 45 minutes to the gym. Yeah, it's a whole thing out there. I like it, but I hate it at the same time because there's nothing out there. It's really a place to go, like when you're done with life and just over everybody, which I'm getting there.
I've been trying to convince my wife to move to Texas for 2 years now.
My wife went one time and was convinced.
It's worth it.
She's from California, but she is convinced after one trip to Texas to move there. So, all right, let's talk a little bit more about kind of what he was in terms of just paying, because something is in terms of paying players, because something that he mentioned, he did actually mention a number when he said like the revenue sharing is going to be tough for teams that, you know, don't have a good donor NIL base, fan base, selling out teams. And he was talking about like, you know, those teams are going to be left in the dust of the teams that kind of do have not only the revenue sharing, but the NIL, the donors, and the fan support buying tickets and stuff like that. But he did mention like Nebraska being up there with the top teams in terms of averaging, and he mentioned 14 to 15 million mark in terms of, I don't know if that's portal. I would imagine so, because they were kind of transitioning from the portal talk. If that's over rosters, I feel like it has to be kind of portal.
I think they'll probably spend between rev share and through 1890, you're probably talking 20 million.
Yep. That's probably where you right around where you have to be though, too. Honestly. Oh yeah. But it is good that we kind of have confirmation that like they are seeing that number and like we got to be there. You know, we got to be paying what these teams are paying. Because that was a little bit of the concern, you know, how much is Matt Rhule going to go into like paying these players versus guys that want to be here type of deal? That was my concern. It's like, because you're going to have some of these 5-star guys to compete, you know, with the likes of the Ohio States of the world and stuff like that, and the Oregons of the world.
Yeah, so, and they're going to spend 30 million probably on their rosters.
Yeah, they're going to spend 20 mil in the portal.
Yeah. So the good thing is we've been told over and over again that Nebraska's got the money, and I think this is the first time really, I would say in the NIL era where we saw Nebraska go out and say, we got money. Yeah, we're going to let people know about it, and we're going to go get the dudes we need, because we saw that on 3 article we talked about a while back where anonymous collectives were saying that Nebraska was one of the top spenders in the portal this cycle. Yeah. It's about time we start spending that money. Yep. Got to win. You got to win.
And last year, looking back in hindsight, they weren't near as aggressive. Like, it just seemed like that was, they were trying to plan like, okay, we're going to not overspend this offseason and then really go into attack mode next offseason. And it made sense because now like they were in a position where, you know, we had a lot of needs on the roster this year, and we have a lot of needs going into next season. They knew we were going to be, you know, losing some guys on this roster, so it gave them an opportunity to kind of see where everything was going to be at, where the players were at, and just go attack specific players for this season that we need. And they were able to get a combination of like developmental guys, but it seemed like half and half, guys that can come and help now versus kind of some of these developmental guys with high upside.
There's one thing that Rhule talked about too, was like how he says this all the time when asked about it. It's kind of like there is no free agency. It's like open season basically.
Yeah, no contracts, no salary cap.
I think a CBA is quickly coming down the pipeline of something to that extent. Like, I can't imagine that this model stays before everything gets blown up. Or are we really going to sit around and wait until this gets so bad where you have to blow it up and redo it? Yeah, someone's got to step in.
My thing is, how much control do they have over this stuff? You know?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, there's going to be something like that in the future to kind of, because it's going to continue to just get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, because you can't track tampering.
No, and I don't know how you go about, like, can they set a salary cap? Like, is that something they can actually do?
Yeah, because then you're deeming them employees.
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it just seems like we're spiraling down this drain, and I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, there's no telling, because it's as soon as we think we know one thing, it just pivots on us.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard to even guess at this point, because we have been wrong every step of the way, every single one of us, about how this was going to go. He also mentioned kind of the comments that he had this offseason about the 4 Big Ten teams, you know, making the playoff, and he did say that, like, you know, when he looked at Nebraska, when he was looking for coaching opportunities, like, they were the team that he looked at, you know, in the middle of the country, said that's a place that can get there when he took the job. And like, he's starting to kind of see that come to fruition, you know, kind of like you talked about, where it was like, you know, again, attacking in that that year 3 kind of going for it this year, and he sees Nebraska as a team that's potentially in a position to do that. If not this year, then soon.
Yeah, the SEC and the SEC media. Oh, I think my kid's crying. My wife's got it. SEC media, like what's his name? The guy with the big glasses on ESPN. What's his name?
Not Paul Feinbaum. Feinbaum?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's ripping Rhule. And then you go back into bowl season, you see that, well, Michigan beat up on Bama. And they're like, well, Bama didn't want to be there. Well, do you think Michigan really wanted to be there either?
Yeah.
And then Illinois beats South Carolina. Nebraska beats Boston College. Like, the Big Ten is clearly this season, at least, the best conference in football. And if not, probably going to stay there, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And he talked about, the travel, the weather, stuff like that, having the one extra conference game that goes into kind of the Big Ten even kind of cannibalizing itself almost with some of the teams, because you got those, he talks about it in the SEC too, where you just got those, it's the random games like that you slip up and can ruin your entire season, like, an unranked Michigan State type of game and stuff like that. And that has been part of what it's derailed a lot of Nebraska's seasons is losses like that as well. Come out, play well against the top 5, top 10 team, and then come out and play terribly against a UCLA, for instance. That kind of derails a lot of the season's kind of momentum. So yeah, like that is an avenue and a good point. Like, should they go to like an all conference schedule like they talked about? Or
I would be a fan of having like a tune-up game against, say, like an FCS team or a lower, like a UTEP game or something like that, just to kind of get your feet wet, and then jumping right into conference play. Because there was one thing the guy asked me, he's like, have you thought about like how truly long this is? Like, we're January 20th and we're still playing football.
Yeah.
I think especially these are, at the end of the day, these are still kids in school. Like, they have to go to school at some point. I'm fine if you cut it down to like 9 to 10 games for the regular season, do a conference title game that means virtually nothing at this point, and then launch into the playoffs. Because, I mean, at this rate, you're playing 12, 13 games, plus you're playing, a bunch of bowl games and playoff games. It's too much. It's a lot on these kids' bodies. They're young.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, it could do a lot better to shorten the season. Just go to every conference game, get that conference title game, and then as much as I hate to see it, like, I just wish, because then that closed the door though for a lot of games that Nebraska could have in the future, an Oklahoma, Nebraska type of rivalry game and stuff like that. So it's like, on one hand, like, yes, it makes sense, but on the other hand, like, there goes a little bit more of that like old school college football feel, because then you can't have those nostalgic matchups and stuff like that unless you meet in the playoffs, which good luck, like trying to, how long would it take for you to match up against all your rivals that you want to match up against in the playoff? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, maybe if you do like a tune-up game and you do a crossover game, like a Nebraska Oklahoma or like Nebraska Tennessee that's coming up, I don't know.
Yeah,
it might be worth it. But then again, you're now basically playing 10 Power 4 opponents this season. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is 100%. And then the extra travel too. Just being cross country, east to west, spanning the travel time comes in, because they do those trackers of like how much each Big Ten team has to travel for next year's schedule. I don't even know if they've done that for next year's schedule. It'd be something I can look at. But
I know Washington at one point played, it was like at Rutgers, and then they flew back home for a game, and then the next week they're in Pennsylvania or something. And it's like, this is just ridiculous. I would like pods for like, it's an NFL model is what they should do. Realistically, they should expand it to 40 teams, put the SEC and the Big Ten as your 2 conferences, split it into pods or divisions or whatever. I mean, that's the rate that I think we're headed.
Yeah. We'll see how long it takes to get there, but yeah, we're heading towards that Power 2, even as much as, like, I think it's the more of what Matt Rhule talked about, where he's talking about the gap separating those teams that don't have the money. Maybe then we'll go to more of that, because at that point I think we're going to see more of the SEC and the Big Ten kind of pull away too.
Yeah, you're going to lose the Northwesterns that just can't compete, or
even the other conferences in general though. Like, they just, some of those teams can't consistently win and recruit and pay money at the levels these other schools can. And the Big Ten's going to have more of that revenue sharing money than some of these other teams. So let me see here. Some of the South Lake Tahoe, California. Is that where you live at? I don't even know where that's at in California. Moved to Guyman, Oklahoma once. It ain't hell, but you can see it from there. These are new markets, and there will be volatility. Eventually, the guardrails will go up. They have to, kind of like you alluded to. They absolutely have to. This, you're going to have college players making more than first-year NFL players if they're not already. In some cases,
Yep.
At Cal and Stanford, our GPA goes up, travel time goes down. True. Yeah, that's the hard part is when you're traveling coast to coast, and then you got schoolwork on top of everything else. And as much as Matt Rhule is a stickler for education stuff too, if it becomes power two, I'm done watching. It's the NFL, and I can't stand the NFL. I don't think I could ever say I'm done watching. That would be hard for me to. That would be hard for me to do. I would hate it. I would hate the change, but I would have to live with it. Northwestern, Vandy, Army, Navy all need to go to a reformatted Ivy League or some kind of style of conference. I think you have to be an Ivy League school. Maybe he's not saying like an Ivy League, but kind of like a group like that, like the Ivy League where they're kind of separate. That would be actually pretty fun. Like, I feel like that
you have a lot of good matchups, actually.
Have the service academies kind of survive in this too, with no.
They don't do NIL. Scholarships either.
They don't do NIL.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Which is crazy that they had the seasons that they had.
I know. Army and Navy were both ranked.
Yeah, Navy. Thank God, go Navy beat the piss out of them. So that also helped too. Yeah, that's where I live and listen to you guys from. Hey, appreciate that, Noah. I got to figure out where this at on map. My geography not
northwest Nevada, I believe, and northeast California. Tahoe is like a big northeast, like that intersects.
Because I wasn't sure if it was more mid or upper Cali. Okay. Was there anything else? So they talked about. So he talked about, again, believes in more about the players, than the plays too. Just talking about overall, how to build a team. And when talking about how to build a team, he's like, or how to build this, kind of from the ground up, like he's trying to. And he talked about you have to have a good staff, because he talked about, Pate asked about the play calling, stuff like that. He's like, you have to have a good staff. You have to have good play calling, but at the same time, you have to have good players that can go on and execute. And we didn't have that last year. Even the play calling sucked, but we didn't have players executing at a high level anyways.
Yeah, so it's I'm a firm believer in Jimmy's and Joe's. Yeah,
and for the quote he's referencing, for those who don't know, Jimmy's and Joe's, over X's and O's. Like, that's kind of the – and then from there, the thing about that makes teams like Ohio State very good is they have all of that talent and they scheme well for that talent. It's not just one or the other. So, but he's talking about when Nebraska being a playoff team this year, he's talking about believes in the guys that he has now on the team. And I feel like maybe that's why he feels like he could be a little bit more hands off with some of the coaching, because I think he's kind of got the team in a position where he's confident in it. It sounds like he's fully confident in this team. Finally, because he's got the guys he wants where he wants them, and again, finalizing his staff too.
I think this has the team and as a whole, I think, has a chance to really do something special. And we're going to find out when Michigan comes to town, because they're going to be pretty darn good next year too.
Yes,
but at the end of the day, they got to put it all together. But there is a quiet confidence with Matt Rhule right now.
Yeah, there is, and he's never shy. He's a guy who's willing to put his money where his mouth is, but also at the same time, he doesn't overstate things. Like, if they suck, he'll call out, he'll call it out. He's pretty honest and transparent with it. And so I don't think it's him putting on, but I think the biggest thing that kind of is going to be the determining factor in that is just because I feel like the biggest part of that is your portal guys. Like, Dane Key is supposed to be, kind of an NFL level, top day one, day two NFL level player for this team to work. Isaiah Hunter has to kind of come in and be that guy, who's a playmaker, can do a little bit of everything, go up and get 50-50 balls. You know, because he is a big body guy, but he's got really good feet at the same time. So kind of like that playmaker, you know, those guys, because we talk about Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair, that's part of the big reason why this team didn't have success last year too, was just, you know, Jamal Banks, for what it was worth, I thought he did decently well, but just kind of didn't live up to the hype.
There was tons of hype too.
Yes.
Banks. I think that's part of Nebraska's bigger picture problem in the last decade is you just don't have a lot of NFL guys.
Yep.
You got guys that make like a UDFA deal, but you don't have guys that are getting picked in the first, second, third, fourth round. I mean, your best player in the last 5, 6, 7 years was Trey Palmer, and he's a fringe NFL wide receiver.
And then you got Jeremiah Smith over at Ohio State, who's like a freshman and the greatest wide receiver in college football history. Yeah. Like, that's what you're up against.
Yeah. It's crazy. Your best corner was Tommy Hill this past year, and well, until he got hurt. And right now, you're looking at a 5th or 6th round draft grade.
Yeah, so that's
our problem.
The reality. That's the reality of it right there. And so they got, you know, they got that guy in Dane Key. They got a couple of these guys that they feel, and they're still building. Still, they're still far away from where they need to be in that, but it's a start, because I feel like I'm more confident in Dane Key than I was this year than I was in Jamal Banks last year, because again, he had a lot of flaws in his game. His route running wasn't very polished. He didn't put a lot of effort in on his route running. I did a film review on him before he came over, but he was very good at, you know, with his ball skills. He was very good at, you know, drawing penalties. He just kind of, in this offense, just couldn't find a way to get open, because for him, it's not, he can't get separation. And so since the route concepts weren't getting him separation, his route running is poor. He didn't get a lot of opportunities.
And really, too, like the one-on-one balls he was winning were perfect throws by Dylan. Like that one against Boston College where Dylan put it, or no one else was going to get it except for Banks or whoever he was thrown to. But in this situation, it's Banks. I think Key and Hunter alone are going to probably each do like 40, 50 catches each. I think that'd be a very fair estimate, which I think
Dane Key is probably going to be the biggest target monster on this team for sure.
Yeah, I would, like, if you kept Banks and Naor on this roster, they're probably not even the rotation next season.
I could see that,
because you have Hunter, Key. I think Cortez Mills is going to play quite a bit. We got Ja'Cory coming back. I mean, that's 4 or 5 guys right there.
Shoot, you know, probably they're going to get a little bit of Hardly Gilmore out there too.
Oh yeah. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, they upgraded that wide receiver room
like crazy.
Like, yeah, it's crazy how good it could be.
But that's what they came out there in the initial, you know, part of the transfer portal season and said, is like they were throwing big money at the wide receiver position, and it didn't come to fruition early, but it started to kind of hit there and the Dane Key was the big one. That was the one we had to get, and that was kind of a little raucous ride there, but ultimately did end up coming over. So. I'll never be done with college ball. The old model had to pass. I can't surprise. Yeah, 100%. It's unfortunate, but we got to deal with it. That's kind of what I'm saying. Money ruins everything. Is no more recruiting a kid from high school. Yep, give them the most money and hate to see it. Yeah, 100%. I totally understand what you're saying with that NFL like model. It's, you know, contracts. I mean, contracts without contracts, but it's paying for players to get the best roster you can. Yeah, 100%. You know, part of the allure of college football is seeing those guys get developed, and those guys who were kind of not very good, you know, and all of a sudden they get developed into a monster. You know, Amir Abdullah, his first couple seasons at Nebraska was not that Amir Abdullah. You know, there was concerns with his speed and stuff like that initially, but he developed into that monster.
Can you imagine how much he'd be making right now?
Oh my God.
He'd probably make more than his NFL contract right now.
Yeah, he'd been making bank.
And those teams like Auburn and Bama that wanted him as a corner, and they see, okay, this kid's a freak at Nebraska. Let's go throw X amount of money at him and see if he'll come back home. I mean, you lose the attachment to a player that you see come from an average player to a really damn good player. You lose that attachment, and it sucks from a fan standpoint. But I mean, it is what it is at this point. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, and you know, another aspect of that too is like that's why he's very important about or focused on getting players with connections to coaches and ties, you know, coaches with ties to certain areas, so he can at least help that longevity and players want to be there, and stay there.
That's why Mosey is so important. That's why Simpson and Williams.
Yep. All those guys. Cripes were shocked at all that and even Barthel, this weekend. We're always shocked that a half dozen of our players not even getting the combine invite. Exactly. This is probably the best wide receiver room we've seen in Scarlet and Cream. By the way, none of those wide receivers would have given us the time of day 10 years ago. I think on paper, without a doubt, this is going to be one of the better rooms we've had, if not the best. Defensive line question. I think Ty benefited in a huge way from Nash. I'm more worried about replacing Nash than Ty. Nash was that disruptor, man. And a lot of in that 3-3-5 defense, your nose is the most important part because his job is to take on as many blockers as he can. His job isn't even a numbers thing. It's more so for disruption and the amount of blockers, if he draws doubles, that makes everybody else's life easier, kind of like you're talking about with Ty. So I think they fed off each other and benefited off each other a lot because if you weren't double teaming one, you had to double team the other, vice versa. So I think they benefited each other without a doubt. But I do think Nash had a big factor, for sure, in this entire defensive line.
I think that's why we see more 4-man fronts next season.
Yes, I agree.
In my opinion.
Yeah, because we talked about the interior D line. We don't have a guy like that, even close to that on this roster right now. And who knows? Maybe a guy can come out of nowhere. But look, we don't have any guys that are expected to be. We don't even have guys who are like really interior D linemen. We just have guys that we can put in that interior D line.
Yeah. So
that'll be an interesting thing to see is because right now we don't have a replacement for him, but it might be kind of that starting to get a little bit more bigger up front, which we're probably going to do anyways, with those 4-down linemen, but that's going to probably have us see it more. He was such a huge plug and run stopper. Yeah, exactly. And so was Robinson. Robinson was pretty good in the run game throughout his career. But yeah, I think Nash made him really come on and vice versa. So it's a very important point. But yeah, we'll continue to talk more about that D line, that interior D line, and stuff like that over the course of this offseason as we get into the second part of the portal here. Was there anything specific that you wanted to touch on, from that interview? And we'll listen to more of it too, and probably maybe break it down a little bit in a video or next time. So, but were there anything else that you wanted to touch on from that stood out?
I feel like Rhule's making it a point. And I agree with the point too, that the first round bye gives you no real value other than having time off. Like when you're talking about the playoffs, like if I'm a coach and I know winning my conference title game gives me a first round bye, and then I have to take my team on the road to New Orleans or wherever, is it worth that extra time off and not get a chance at a home game? Or I think we should do the first 2 rounds for home games. There's no reason to play a Sugar Bowl, a Peach Bowl, an Orange Bowl, a Rose Bowl, what other ones are there? There's a Cotton Bowl. There's 6 different bowl games. It's ridiculous.
And the thing about it is, you look at baseball, right? And since baseball has gone to that, this different kind of changed up playoff where that first round bye is really hurting, or the fact that the way they have it now with the play-in game, and stuff like that. With that, it's kind of like the teams that are the 1 seeds lose every year now.
Yeah.
You got last year, the what was it? The Pods, it was 2022 where the Padres, Dodgers, I think the Astros were the only team that didn't lose in that wild card round.
So what benefit is there?
I'm sorry, the divisional round, because of the way they were breaking that up and the amount of time off that they had.
Yeah, I just don't understand the benefit. I mean, even in the NFL too, you see that those teams that have the first round bye, they always usually come out sluggish.
Yeah.
I mean, they usually win because there's a little bit bigger gap in the NFL, I think. But
yeah, and it's just any given weekend, the shorter the series, the more it benefits the lesser team. Mm-hmm. A 7-game series in baseball is completely different than a 3-game series and how you manage it. And the better team will usually win a 7-game series, but not a 3-game series. And so this is even more so it's like any given weekend. You come out flat after that break and you don't have a lot of time to recover. You lose one of those 3-game series in baseball, your elimination day after 162 games, your back's against the wall in that next game. You have to win it.
Yeah, and you could have won 110 games. and
Exactly.
you're out of it because you got a first round bye and the other team comes in on maybe a little bit of hot streak.
Yep. Or they're just fired up and they know they got to
Yeah.
win 2 games. They're like, we
like
only win 2 games.
Like the year the Royals went to the World Series, and the next year when they won it, I mean, they got hot.
Yeah.
They probably weren't the best team in baseball, but they got hot.
Look, Braves when they beat the Astros in the World Series, Nationals when they beat the Astros in the World Series, Phillies when they got to the World Series against the Astros. There's 3 examples of it right there of just teams that were sneaking into the playoffs just on hot streaks and ended up winning it. So yeah, sometimes you got to wonder that. Those 2 are hard to replace. Yeah. It says, I have faith in Terry Braden. Doesn't even know who's in his room yet. We'll probably see them move a couple portal players after spring. Yeah, I think they'll get it figured out. I don't think Matt Rhule, with how he was talking about wanting the season to go, will go with huge weakness in the middle of his defensive line, because he talked about stopping the run too. So I think he knows, or has some kind of plan of what he wants to do with that for sure.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be any buys, if I'm not mistaken. 3 of the 4 bye lost their first playoff game.
All of them did, except Texas.
I think it was 3 out of 4. Texas was the only one, and they, by the hair of their chin snuck by there.
I don't think Texas had a first round bye, actually. Didn't they play Georgia?
Oh no, Arizona State did. So they lost too.
So all their first round buys lost.
Was it? Because it was Oregon.
It was Oregon. They lost.
But Oregon lost in the second round, right?
Yeah, they had a first round bye.
Oh, I'm thinking third. Yeah, you're right. So they lost in the second round. So they just played Ohio State. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Boise State lost.
Boise State lost.
Arizona State.
Who was the other one?
Someone's got to
Georgia. Was it Georgia?
Well,
the other one?
I thought they played Texas.
Well, yeah, they did. So were they the first seed in the other one though?
I can look it up real quick if you want.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
This is very vital information.
But because it's like that's how it works though. You get these buys like in baseball, like I talked about 2022, where it was like 3 of the 4 teams, and I think it might have even happened last year too, where it's like those 1 seeds were not. They just couldn't get going.
Let's see. Well, that's not it. Oh my gosh, got a bunch of people that made.
Was it Penn State? No, it wasn't Penn State. Actually,
Penn State beat.
It was Oregon. It was Oregon. That's right. Oregon beat Penn State in the Big Ten title game, but it might have been 3 of the 4.
This is gonna drive me nuts.
But it's like you'd almost rather your team get in without the bye. I feel like. You know what I'm saying?
Notre Dame. Yeah, Notre Dame's the only one that won.
Okay, so Notre Dame.
Oh no, they had Indiana first round. This bracket's not right, but it's got the BCS or the CFP logo right on it.
Sure, they didn't get a bye.
They played Indiana, didn't they?
Yeah. Was that in the first round or the second round? Hold on. Your search skills are not very good, I don't think.
I'm looking at NBC Sports, and this graphic sucks.
So I'm going to
Arizona State, Boise State.
Okay, so first round. Yeah, so first round, Arizona State had a bye. Oregon, Boise State, Georgia. Yeah, so it was Georgia. Okay. So yeah, Notre Dame beat Georgia. Boise State lost to Penn State. Ohio State beat Oregon. So yeah, all 4 byes lost. All 4 byes lost. Yeah, so that begs the question,
what's the point?
Yeah, 100%. Do teams want that bye? I think some teams might if they're really beat up, but even you look at a team like Oregon, they had a wide receiver down too. Tez Johnson, I think, was down to start that, right? Wasn't he? No, I think they lost Tez Johnson in the Penn State game, but then they had him for the final. So they were pretty healthy. So you got teams that potentially may need that time but usually by that point, if you have players out, they're going to be out. So there's not time for them to recover. So yeah, what is the benefit at that point of the bye? Extra week of rest, but again, sometimes it's better to just keep it rolling, especially coming off some momentum. I'm just freaking contrarian tonight. I like the playoff. Maybe need some tweaking, but I'm happy with it. I think we're all a little contrarian, but we understand that we have to just accept it for what it is. I think a lot of us don't feel positive about the future of what college football is going to be, but we just kind of understand that we gotta deal with it and roll with the punches.
And with SEC and Big Ten trying to throw their weight around and get a 14 or 16 team playoff, I mean, it's going to get more crazy.
It's going to get worse and worse. Yeah. But again, we got to try to love it for what it is, and love the elements of old college football that are still there while they're there. So, but money ruins everything, as we know.
So, the root of all evil.
Yep. All right. So, anything else before we conclude the show today? Again, me and him got some stuff coming up for y'all. He posted a couple of videos this week, and we're going to be getting together, get a upload schedule for y'all going throughout this off season. So as we get more news coming out, and Pit Snipe has some advice to everybody before we sign off. Drink heavily. Trust me, be pre-med. So listen to Pit Snipe. We didn't tell you that. It was Pit Snipe. Don't come after us if alcohol gets you in a bind, please. It was not our doing. Don't sue. All right, Brian, anything else before we go to conclude the show?
No.
First off, I want to thank everybody
we covered it
here. Yeah, I think we about covered a lot of what we wanted to. Appreciate everybody, of course, that's in here every week with us, man. Thank you all so much. Y'all help keep the show going. And Brian, do you got anything to tease this week so far, or we're just going to get rolling with the content as it comes out?
We're just going to roll with it. Just be ready, because we're going to start pumping stuff out
yes, sir.
frequently.
Yes, sir. It's time to get back after it. So y'all stay tuned for all the latest and greatest. Again, if you haven't liked the stream, drop a like on there. I suck at asking for that. If you want to subscribe, go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, which I think a lot of y'all are. So that being said, I think we are going to wrap up, and we got some videos coming this week, whether it be individual or together. Y'all let us know what y'all think of those in the comments as well. Drop a like on those if y'all don't mind. And yeah, with that being said, I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.